Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Chad.
And I'm Evan.
And today you are joining us for our recap and discussion of Exile, Book 2 in the Dark Elf Trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. What did you think, Evan?
That was pretty good. It was all right.
This one's the least of my favorite of the three, unfortunately.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It is, but it's still very good.
Yeah, it just felt really gloomy.
Yeah, it's very gloomy.
I mean, obviously it's going to. You're in like an underground. You're underground the entire time.
Literally, it's very gloomy, yes.
Yeah, but definitely Drizzt is just... He was kind of just bumming me out for like a lot of it. Like, I get it, for sure. He's so lonely. He just wants to make friends. I felt like he just kind of like threw himself into a situation. You know what I mean? That he just didn't really need to be in.
With
like
the Sverfdebly?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm desperate for friends.
I know. It's so sad in the beginning of the book. He goes and talks to the Myconids, and they're just like, we'll tolerate you, but we don't want to be friends. And he's just like, okay.
All right. I'll hang out near you, though.
But I did really like the whole like hunter aspect, like his berserker mode thing that he seems to go into. That was really interesting. And I had kind of asked about that on the earlier episode when we talked about Homeland. Like, does his kind of nature, I guess, take over at any point? And I got my answer to that. So that's pretty cool. Kind of rounds out the character.
Yeah, totally. Kind of gives him something, a darker side, so he's not all happy like moral Drizzt. He kind of has this alter ego he can switch into when he needs to be like in life or death situation and just deal out some serious hurt and then regret it later.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say that is I don't know about this is like the fight scenes all kind of start blending together.
Yeah,
they were really cool in the first book because he was learning so much. And now, I mean, obviously, Drizzt isn't going to get hurt or even, he's going to be fine. So it's just kind of like after a while, it's like, all right, so how is he going to take down like this monster this time? You know, the Basilisk fight was really cool.
Yeah,
I liked that. I like all the fights. It's just, I find myself kind of like skimming just a little bit through them now and then because it's just like, and then he picked up his scimitar and spun around and then flanked them and then picked up his other scimitar.
Skittered over like, here, did a double thrust low. And
yeah. But I mean, Salvatore writes some really great fight scenes for sure. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of it's a little formulaic almost. I can kind of feel it start. Maybe it's just this one book because, it's like even in like Streams of Silver and Halfling's Gem.
Formulaic is a pretty good word for it. There's the character of Artemis Intriri, who's one of my favorite bad guys of all time, that is introduced in the Halfling's Gem. I believe he is the. I think
it might be this in Streams of Silver. I think
is it.
I think so.
It's whenever he takes Regis, who is like on the lam from the Pasha Pook, who's like the head of this assassin robbers thieves guild down in Callum, some southern town, and he comes up to take his Pasha Pook's revenge on old Regis, who stole his little twinkly turning gem that hypnotizes people. And Triri is a good introduction to the tale because whereas before everything is killable by Drizzt, and Triri is like his alter ego in both his like their
nemesis.
Yeah, he's their nemesis, and they're kind of like different sides of the same coin. And Drizzt is like, I was only a couple decisions from becoming you, and they are basically matched when it comes to swordplay, and so they have really good fights.
Yeah, I read Icewind Dale so long ago.
Yeah,
it's been a little bit, but I remember a little bit of that. But yeah, I mean, didn't hate this book at all. It was just kind of like second book in a trilogy. We're underground the entire time. If Drizzt hadn't made friends with Belwar, Glissendolp or whatever,
Salvatore Dolp,
Salvatore just thinking these names up on the fly.
I know,
But I liked Belwar quite a bit. Actually, Belwar seemed like kind of like a precursor to
Bruenor Battlehammer. Yeah, he is definitely the like Bruenor 0.5.
The beta. The beta version. He's testing him out. But I'm really excited to see what happens in Sojourn. What's going on with Drizzt as he gets out of the caves and everything and kind of into the wider world. I think that'll be a little bit more exciting of a book. But let's get right into the recap here.
All right.
The story begins in Menzo Berenzan, 10 years after the events of Homeland. Matron Malice and the rest of the Do'urden family are still waging war with House Hanet, and with the help of renegade Jarlaxle and his group of Brigand Daerth, the Do'urden family prevail against the Hanet, moving them to 8th position in the Drow hierarchy. Meanwhile, Drizzt is living in the wilds of the Underdark in a small cavern inhabited by himself and a group of Myconids. After defeating a basilisk, Drizzt hears voices far down a tunnel and decides to investigate. He spots a group of Svirfnebli mining and follows them home. When they arrive in a cavern outside their city doors, Drizzt decides not to follow them in. Back in Menzoberranzan, Matron Malice is informed by the Drow Council that Matron Sinefé Hanet is to join the Do'urden family under the alias of Shinane. Malice is also motivated to find and kill Drizzt to appease the Spider Queen. Dinin and Briza gather Drow soldiers and begin searching for Drizzt in the tunnels of the Underdark. Drizzt and Guinevere hear the party and try evading them, although Drizzt does not realize the house emblem that he carries is a locator device. He figures it out after a brief chase and fits the pouch over Guinevere's head so he can confuse and stalk his hunters. The party comes to a fork in the passage, so Briza tells 3 to go one way and 2 the other, leaving herself and Dinin alone. Drizzt drops down and knocks his brother unconscious with one hilt of his scimitar and holds his second to Briza's neck. Briza tries to convince Drizzt to come home, foolishly mentioning his place in the family as the new weapons master after the death of his father, Zaknafein. A fight starts between them. Drizzt's new berserker persona called the Hunter takes over, and he destroys Briza's beloved six-headed snake whip. She pulls out a mace only to be beaten down and have 2 fingers severed. Dinin goes to attack, but sees only his death and flees from the scene. As Drizzt makes his killing move on Briza, Guinevere pins him to the floor, giving Briza her chance of escape. Enraged at Guinevere, he runs away, and when Guinevere disobeys his orders and returns to its own plane, Drizzt realizes that he almost broke his promise to never kill a drow again. Sometime later, Drizzt is out hunting, and he hears the Svirfneblin and decides to follow them back to their home. He finally decides to hand himself over, hoping they'll be allies, but they have no idea what to make of his peaceable actions and bind his hands before leading him into their city. In Menzoberranzan, the family of House Do'urden discuss whether they should go after Drizzt again. Briza and Dinin are not keen at all since their last encounter. Malice hatches an idea, so a ceremony takes place to bring forth a Yokol of Loth. To please Loth, Malice has decided to sacrifice Risen so that they may regain enough favor to carry out her plans. As the Yokol is called, Malice goes to strike Risen, but instead murders Sinefé, which gives her enough respect from Loth to perform Zin Karla, a spell which reanimates the corpse of a single dead person, but their mind is controlled mentally through the matron of the house, a gift only given to complete a specific task. Malice reanimates Zaknafein, knowing that he alone can destroy Drizzt. In Blingdenstone, the city of the Deep Gnomes, Drizzt is taken to a single dark room for interrogation. Knowing that death is the only way out of the city, Drizzt accepts his fate. The interrogator believes Drizzt is different, but has no power to help him. Drizzt suddenly recalls the survivor of the Drow raid many years before, and asks that he may speak to Belwar Disengulp. In the anteroom of House Do'urden, the family is gathered inside, with Malice, and Risen back together. Malice allows Risen to strike the spirit wraith of Zaknafein Do'urden, but as Risen goes to strike, Zaknafein kills him. Drizzt meets Belwar, and with the Deep Gnome recognizing Drizzt, the Drow is allowed to live with the gnome in his home. Although Drizzt is not allowed Guinevere, his armor, or weapons, he feels at peace in the city. After several 10 days, Drizzt goes outside and meets a group of young Svirfneblin. He reenacts the killing of the basilisk, but lets the hunter get the better of him and faints in the reconstructed hands of Belwar. Meanwhile, Zaknafein is scouting for Drizzt and comes upon his old shelter in the Myconid cavern. The Myconids see him and attempt to communicate, but Zaknafein kills them all. He also kills a pack of goblins, which are later found by a group of deep gnomes. Zaknafein watches the gnomes and follows their path. Later, Drizzt is reacquainted with Guinevere and goes on a mining caravan with some fellow gnomes, who he later helps get rid of a goblin party. Jarlaxle meets with the Counselor of Blingdenstone to give him information from Menzoberranzan. Furball, the Counselor, finds out that the destruction wreaked around Blingdenstone is caused by House Do'urden hunting for Drizzt. Drizzt, having the most joy in the city that he hasn't felt in years, is unfortunately told he has to leave Blenkinstone by King Schnicktick because of the threat of Zaknafein and what he could do to the gnomes. As Drizzt leaves the city, Belwar accompanies him, and together they set off into the Underdark. After setting up a decoy encampment, Drizzt and Belwar head off in search of a new home. They come across a cavern of poisonous brooches, a plant that the native grubber caterpillar eats. They pass the area, only to be chased by the grubber. They find a side passage, only to have it become a dead end. Belwar knows there is a path on the other side of the wall and cuts it down within a few hours. Once through, they climb down into another passage and come upon a huge chamber, with a large chasm filled with green acid. They cross over the pathway only to be ambushed by a group of birdmen crossovers. Another fight ensues, and during this, Guinevere falls into the acid and returns to the astral plane for healing. They survive and make it far enough away to gain some distance. Drizzt calls Guinevere to his side, much to Belwar's disagreement, to find that the feline was scolded and hurt. Drizzt sends Guinevere home, and they continue onwards. Zaknafein destroys the decoy camp and is enraged that he has been left waiting for Drizzt for several days. Drizzt and Belwar then see a human wizard filling buckets in a stream. He turns violent and creates an explosive fireball at the side of Drizzt, then escapes them. After a few days, they find a cavern with a lake and 3 chambers, which they proclaim as home. Zaknafein, meanwhile, has moved to the grubber's home and kills the grubber for its trouble. Another few days pass, and the cavern is invaded by a hook horror. Drizzt pounces on it and is about to kill it when he sees its face and notices it is not actually a hook horror. It is a peck, transformed by an evil wizard named Brister Fendelstick, and made to wander the Underdark as a hideous monster. Drizzt and Belwar befriend it and call it Clacker, as it cannot recall its own name. They set off later to find the wizard and attempt to turn Clacker back into a peck. They come across the wizard's home, and although he will not let them in, Drizzt puts the onyx figurine into an arrow slit, letting Guinevere enter the building. The wizard reluctantly lets them in, and as he agrees to change Clacker back, he mutters a curse to Clacker under his breath, which Clacker, with his excellent ability to hear, overhears, and with the rage of a hook horror, murders the wizard. This means he will have to remain a cross between his peck mind and his hook horror body. Zaknafein finds Drizzt and Belwar's cavern. Although his instincts tell him to wait, Malice is too impatient and sends the wraith off. The trio return only to find the shelter trashed by the wraith. Once again, they set off to put more distance between themselves and Menzoberranzan. They come into yet another huge cavern, only to sense danger. There they are all attacked by illithids and taken under their control. They come to, and are all under the command of the illithid masters in a cavern filled with huge illithid community and their slaves. Belwar is made a gladiator, Drizzt a massager of the illithid brain, and Clacker is left on an island surrounded by a chasm to tend to a herd of Roth. The 3 illithid masters who own the 3 slaves are in their complex. 2 of them go to the astral plane to observe Guinevere, having obtained the figurine. Zaknafein then enters the region, and the illithids believe he will make a great asset of their works. He slaughters the 4 that come after him and heads towards the cavern. The 2 illithids that are with Guinevere return to the material plane, and the panther follows them, leaving one trapped forever in the astral plane, and returns to help Drizzt. Clacker, trapped on his island, observes the commotion and tries to hit the lever with missiles on the other side of the chasm to activate the bridge. He succeeds and meets with Drizzt and Belwar, who have regained control of their minds and have found their armor. Guinevere also meets them and the 4 leave. Drizzt meets Zaknafein and duels, only to be saved by Clacker with his unleashing of a super peck ability. They carry on running, and being pursued by Zaknafein and the illithids. Once at a safe distance, Drizzt agrees to head back to Menzoberranzan to see if any drow would help Clacker return to his peck form. On their flight through the tunnels, they once again return to the Acid Lake Cavern. Clacker, who arrives on the other side first, is murdered by Zaknafein, and Drizzt has a final confrontation with him. Back in Menzoberranzan, Malice has deteriorated from constant control of the Wraith and loses control of its mind. In the duel, Zak's personality returns from the Wraith, and explaining to Drizzt quickly about Zen Carla before Malice regains control, Zaknafein leaps into the acid. Malice screams and is killed by Briza, who takes up the mantle of Matron of House Do'urden. Unfortunately for her, a gift of 200 soldiers from House Benir turn on the Do'urden family and kill the soldiers, Briza and Maya. Vierna is kept as a handmaiden for House Benir, whereas Dinin is taken under the wing of Jarlaxle and his band of rogues. Drizzt is unaware of this, but returns to Blingdenstone with Belwar. They depart from each other after a brief stay, Drizzt knowing that Belwar truly belonged in Blingdenstone. Drizzt is given a few gifts and leaves with a map of the Underdark to find a passage to the open lands of Faerun. The book ends with Drizzt and Guinevere sat upon a mountain edge, watching the sky and awaiting their next adventure.
Boy, in the retelling of that, I forgot how many different, well, first off, silly names there are. Like,
dude, that was like kind of difficult to read.
Yeah,
like it's easy to read with my eyes. But
tick.
I bet recording the audiobook for this was a pain in the ass. Like seriously, like, Sverf Neblin. If there's a V in that word,
Neblin. Oh.
Sverf Neblin.
He loves putting the asterisk in the middle. Not the the apostrophe in the middle of people's names too, just because.
It's such a joy to read, but man, reading this out loud is kind of a nightmare actually. But whatever, it's fine. Okay, so I mean, one of the main reasons that I feel like this book is just kind of like it's fine, but it's kind of meh. It's like I feel like there's a lot of really inconsequential stuff happening here, like them meeting Clacker, and then just Clacker dying before they even go back to Menzo.
Clacker is such a sad story, too.
I know,
like,
it's super
his whole
sad.
Essence is just sad as fuck.
And I liked Clacker a lot. I wish that he would have stuck around for a book or two. It was like one of the more interesting parts of this whole book is Clacker being half bird person. He's like a quarter bird person, or like whatever.
Half hookor, half whatever the other little like talkers of the stone. Yeah, Peck. There we go. Yeah, stone whisperers, who I've never actually heard. They're one of the few creatures that I've never heard of before these books, you know?
Well, it's funny because you've got like these people that are really good with like they're stone whisperers or whatever, and it's like, wait, isn't that what the Sverf Nebli are? And even Clacker's like, well, they can kind of do it too, but like not as well as us. And
we're just like the better version.
It's like, why do you have two versions, dude?
Yeah.
Okay, it's whatever. But yeah, like I thought that Zaknafein was a nice surprise.
Yes, he's a very cool addition to this story.
That was a nice twist on it, honestly. I think that kind of propelled me through the book when I realized that eventually Drizzt and Zaknafein were going to have to duke it out again.
And like a radical end fight over an acid lake. Like, can you get cooler than that? It's so radical.
You're fighting your dead father over a lake of acid.
Yeah, and it's like
your reanimated dead father.
Drizzt is all like troubled because he's the one person that they kind of had a thing, you know, that could like see each other on the same morality, and like, he just like hates every bit of it. And the acid lake, it's just very cool.
Yeah. The Illithid part, I didn't like that at all. None of it. I was not into the
weird.
Okay, can you explain to me like what the Illithids are? Are they like
Okay, so imagine like Cthulhu, right? Cthulhu face mixed with like Predator. Predator and Cthulhu face have a love child, and they're this extremely intelligent, being that is not like an animal.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Was there an Illithid in Benir's, like Matron Benir's house or whatever?
She keeps one as like telepathic helper.
I just
advisor.
made that connection. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think he's actually he's like an emissary from the community that Drizzt did work to, and I think that becomes a thing like way later in the books, if I'm not forgetting. But yeah, Drizzt is not loved among the Illithid community. They're basically like the Underdark's version of the Borg, right? They're like, each one is sentient on their own, but they're connected via the main like mothership mind that Drizzt is the massager of. That's kind of like their LAN party connector.
Well, so as much as I didn't like that sequence of events, just because I felt like it was just dumb, it felt like a place filler, because they end up going back to this acid lake.
Right, you guys just turned around.
Right, I know. It's like I almost feel like Salvatore was just like, I can't put out a book that's only 200 pages. I gotta, they gotta, something else has to happen to them. Which is whatever, but it's just like Drizzt is like massaging their brains.
I know, it's super weird. No, it is like, and it's always like kind of gross yet super satisfying when he's like squelching, attacking it and stuff. And Guinevere is just like nomming into it, just like nom nom. I think he's like completely inside of it. It's super gross. And the old Guinevere like jumping into the acid lake, but oh, just go into the astral plane to heal is like
So D&D.
oh, it's so D&D, and it gets used as like a save a main character out of certain death scenario so many times. Like, well, that person's definitely dead because you cannot survive that situation. Nope. Guinevere grabbed him and took him to the astral plane right at the last second, and then you just bring him back next time you call up old Gwynny.
Gwynny.
Yeah.
I was not expecting Matron Malice to die.
Man, it sucks to be a drow. Your moment of weakness, those closest to you don't support you. They kill you and take your stuff.
But I mean, good on Salvatore for sticking with. There's a lot of consistency there, at least. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's weird because I wasn't expecting it, even though by now I'm fairly familiar with how drow culture works. But I felt like Malice just had like at least in her family, like a pretty good like hold on power.
Right.
But I guess Briza was kind of like working her way up too.
She was a dom.
Yeah, Briza's a lot for sure. And I was not the whole Cinefe thing was also weird because it's like, why even
take the chance? Like the one thing that could kill your whole family is that person. Like,
and if you're gonna kill off Risen anyway,
just kill him.
Why do the whole like? There's like this whole conversation that happens. It's towards the beginning of the book where the council meets and they're like, okay, so here's this whole backstory for Cinefe joining the Do'urdens and everything,
right.
And then she just kills her anyway, and the Spider Queen's like, that'll work too, and it's like, okay, cool, I guess. Like, why did we do all of this? Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's just like consistency as far as like the drow, the way that they operate. Right. Like one queen or one priestess, one high priestess of the drow is seen as like a couple thousand male warriors, you know. So it's like that
she would have been spared.
Yeah, like that's a huge asset, you know.
Yeah,
but and I mean, I guess a huge asset if you ever need to, you know, sacrifice someone to the Spider Queen, who really, really loves her enemies being sacrificed to her, but even more than that, loves her followers being sacrificed to her by another one of her followers. That's like really gets her off.
Yeah, that is. I want to see what's up with this Spider Queen. I don't think we're gonna see the Spider Queen in Sojourn.
Yeah, you see, the Lokyals, I believe, like her handmaidens.
Yeah, you saw one in this one too. I think they brought out a Yoklol in the first book too.
They might have, yeah, like this waxy.
Yeah, I was getting the Yawclaws and the Illithids mixed up actually. Beforehand. But now it's more clear to me.
I have a question. This is, and I don't remember how great of a part he plays, but this is your first introduction of my favorite all-time drow besides Drizzt, which is Jarlaxle.
Yeah.
I love Jarlaxle. What an awesome character.
Yeah, Jarlaxle was cool. Honestly, I wish we had seen more of him than just like 2 conversations.
I don't remember how much he is in this book.
So he's in the beginning when they're fighting the Hanettes and like his people are kind of littered around through
Bregan de Arth,
so there's that. And then there's the conversation that Jarlaxle has with the Svirfnebli counselor. Like the gnome counselor. And then that's like kind of it, except for like at the very end when Dinan joins. Which is really cool. I liked that a lot. That like Dinan is just like, I don't want to die. So like, what do I gotta do? I gotta do? Yeah, Dinan's cool.
I think you see a lot more of Jarlaxle in the next one.
Yeah, it's funny because I had kind of looked up. I saw this Reddit thread that was talking about the Dark Elf trilogy, and it was like kind of spoiler free, but a lot of people were like, Jarlaxle's the best. Jarlaxle's so cool. And then in this book, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, he's pretty interesting, I guess, but he doesn't seem any more. I mean, he didn't seem like that much more conniving than any of the other Dark Elves. So, I mean, it's like, oh, look at this guy. Look at how ruthless he is. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of their thing, isn't it?
He's not so much like ruthless as he is he's an agent of chaos. He's always only ever working for himself. Even when he's working with like the most powerful of all people, he still stabs him in the back somehow and like gets his own way. And he always comes out ahead, and he's just like this swaggering, like handsome, Ab's always like open elf, and it's like every one of his items are like magical, where he has like these magical boots that he controls the sound of how loud they make him click. And so lots of times, even though he's capable of being like utterly silent, he'll be like click clacking his way down the hall just to like mess with people. And like he's just an awesome character. He's huge in the later books. He comes and goes quite often.
Yeah, this was a good introduction for him then, because I was pretty interested in kind of like what he had going on and like his. I kind of want to learn more about like his backstory and the Bragan Darth and everything. Seems like
Mhm.
are they like a mercenary group or something?
Yeah, they're like the only like because no, they would never be allowed to, but apparently they're like really useful and some for some very high up people, so they've been allowed to continue. And there's this like place in the town that is a huge like crevice. It's called the Claw Rift, and it's where the Drow like mine all their like kobolds, their kobold fodder that they use in battle. And Bragan Darth has like their little camp like set up down there. It's all secret and awesome.
I'm so glad you know so much about this.
Yeah, I really love Jarlaxle. He's the great. He's like who does
What, Johnny Depp?
is like where did all the rum go? Yeah, yeah.
Oh
He's kind of
yeah,
like him, but
Jack
like the Drow
Sparrow.
elf, like evil
He kind of
version.
reminded me of like Nikomo Casca in like the Joe Abercrombie stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I
a
see
little bit
that.
like that.
Yeah,
Nikomo
yeah.
Casca.
Come on,
Yeah,
Casca. Yeah, he's just kind of a
yeah.
swaggering like mercenary.
I feel like a lot of this book, this didn't need to be as long as it was.
No, it was milked a little.
I liked most of it, but there's parts where it's like, dude, you could really cut this down so much. Like when
The whole
Drizzt is
fight with
like,
the Birdmen and the first time they get to the Acid
I
Lake.
actually really liked that
It
part.
was
I thought that
great.
was
Yeah.
cool because I like. I mean, maybe I'm just a sucker for like bird hybrid creatures. Those things are always really. I was really excited to read about that. But like the part where Drizzt is kind of like observing this Firth Nibley,
Yeah, what
that
goes
was a
on forever.
really exhausting part to read. I mean, it was
He's
just,
so sad
and
and just like, ugh, he's moping.
he's just like, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? Like, oh, and it's, I don't know. Maybe it needed to be that long, but I really don't think it did. I don't think it did at
Yeah,
all.
'cause he's like
He's
trying to
just
be like, well, I've heard they've always been evil, but are they not? And it's like at this point, you probably should just take whatever your people raised you thinking and just like put the opposite to it. Like if they said they were evil, they're probably good. If they said they were good, they're probably evil.
and I mean he just like goes up to them,
Hey, I know we're like arch enemies as like a race, but
and that's before he thinks about Belwar too. It would have made more sense if he was like, I think I might have one friend here with
yeah,
Belwar, but he doesn't even really consider it until after he's already been caught, which I
right. And
thought
he's
was
like,
weird.
oh, I know a guy.
Yeah, and it's like, "Dude, why are you here at all? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, this is so
I think
odd.
it was like
Like,
his
was it
choices
just
and his
pure loneliness? Like,
Yeah, I think in his mind, his choices were become perma hunter and devolve into some
oh
creature of the
yeah,
Underdark, or put myself out there and maybe maintain my humanity. Like
he
that was
needed like
his.
community. I
Yeah,
see. Okay, that makes a little more sense actually.
yeah,
Because
yeah. He was
the way that
losing
I was
his
looking at it was
self.
just kind of like, yeah, man, I know you're lonely, but like, you don't know anything about this culture or community at all. They're going to
Yeah,
arrest you immediately.
maybe kill you.
And
He needed a reason to not become hunter, to not
right,
perma
the
become
hunter thing
hunter.
is really interesting. I wanted to ask, like, is the hunter mindset that he has, is that something that the drow also have, or are they always feeling like that, or what's up with that exactly? Because it felt like it just kind of spontaneously was a thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not no other drows ever like mentioned as possessing the hunter personality type. I think that it's just a persona that he was forced to create to survive not only the
oh,
loneliness of the
interesting.
Underdark, but
Yeah,
also to heighten his senses so he could like become a creature of the Underdark. He's like, I have to be them and be better than them. And so he kind of
yeah.
becomes an animal in order to survive.
I think that was really well shown through the basilisk fight at the very beginning of the book. Salvatore starting the entire book with just Drizzt versus a basilisk. That
Yeah.
was really great because
Doesn't
it's
he
it's
begin upside down in the cavern
I
chamber?
can't
He like
remember
wedged
exact.
himself
Maybe
in there. He's like
yeah.
sleeping like a bat. It's like so cool, but
But
you could never sleep that way. Got
well,
the blood rushing to your head.
like a basilisk. I mean, the way that it's described in this book, and the way that the Svirfnebli kids react when they hear that he took one down. Because I remember the conversation was kind of like, "You saw a basilisk? Like, oh my god!" And then he's like, "I didn't just see it. I killed it.
I
I
killed
fought
it.
it." Yeah, and they're just like, "You got to be kidding me. There's no way."
Yeah.
So it's really cool that the beginning of the book is it shows kind of Drizzt has to evolve into this
Yeah, the
kind of
transformation.
totally. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a thing that becomes like cool in that because when he's in hunter mode, he's like heightened senses. He is like one with his surroundings. He is a creature. He's an animal, but it kind of becomes a problem because he'll maybe kill people that are really close to him. He just goes into like I'm gonna slay everything mode, and so it's later on. There's sometimes that he goes hunter and it's like not the greatest. So I guess you kind of already talked about your surprise about Briza taking over. Did you have any? Because I mean, House Do'urden is basically gone now. Like they get totally wiped
Yeah.
out. Did you have any inkling that that was coming, or was that just like a what?
No, because the progression that I thought that this trilogy was going to take was that eventually Drizzt would be kind of the undoing of House Do'urden at the end of the third book. So I was really surprised to see not only is the Do'urden house storyline kind of wrapped up, or at least dissolved, I would say.
Right.
It seems like he's not ever going back down into the Underdark, or at least has no plans to. So Sojourn seems like it's going to be a much different book than the last two.
Yes.
And I could be wrong about that, obviously, but yeah, I was really not. I thought that the whole trilogy was a House Do'urden arc of sorts.
Oh,
You know what I
okay.
mean? So when Malice dies, I was like, oh, so now Briza is going to lead House Do'urden against Drizzt or something. Because they were doing raids and stuff in the other book, and I was like, so they come outside sometimes, they're going to go after him even outside or whatever. But then House Do'urden is taken down even further, so that's not happening.
Yeah.
Like that was
Kind of
just really,
solves
yeah,
Drist's problem at least momentarily.
one of his problems. I mean, he's
One of
got an
his major
entirely new
problems.
set of problems being out in Faerun, like just as a dark elf. I mean,
He
you
has trouble even
see,
seeing during the daytime.
well, and everybody hates him immediately. I
Yeah.
mean, even in the Icewind Dale trilogy, people are just like, no, 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 like
Right. And that's after
not
he's
that
been around
guy.
for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, because they travel a little bit. I remember specifically in Streams of Silver when they come on to it, like they come to like a new town that Drizzt has never been
Hmm.
to or something, and it's really sad to
Luskin,
see.
yeah.
There's a lot of like prejudice against dark elves. I mean, dark elves are terrible, but it is just kind of like a good example of like the second somebody sees Drizzt, they just profile him immediately,
Right.
and it sucks because he's a good
Yeah.
guy, you know.
Yeah, he is a good guy. Okay, what do you think is going to happen in this next book?
Man, I have no idea. Like, I would have been able to give you a good answer before. Like, the end of Exile is it's just like
He's
we're
like,
done.
boom.
It feels like if yeah, it almost felt like Exile, like Homeland and Exile were like a duology
Hmm.
almost, and like Sojourn. I mean, I have a feeling.
I think he kind of knew that everyone reading was getting a little tired of like, okay, Drizzt Do'Urden's being hunted by his family. Like, I don't know. I think he wanted to give everyone a little surprise that linked into the next three,
Yeah,
and I think he did it pretty cleverly.
I imagine Sojourn will probably be. So it seems like the Spider Queen is still not happy with Drizzt.
Yeah.
So maybe Brig and Darth with Dinan as part of that crew are still going to come after him instead of House Do'Urden. I could see that maybe happening. I don't know where Menzoberranzan is in Faerun. I don't know how close to Ten Towns or Icewind Dale that is. So
Mm.
maybe seeing him make his way up there would be interesting. But yeah, I don't really have like a good idea of what's going to happen next. I mean, he seemed fairly content at the end of this book too, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice. You get a little bit more. I mean, you still get a little bit of a mopey Dritz after he gets, this isn't ruining anything that you definitely don't know already, but as he proceeds to get hated by every race he comes across, he's less mopey in this book. He kind of develops some hope. You meet, Drizzt follows the ranger goddess Mialiki, and she's like a unicorn goddess, and he finds his proverbial old man in the woods who educates him, sort of tropey sort of
Oh,
figure in this
hell
book, and it's
yes.
awesome.
I really wanted to talk about real quick, or for a while, if you have the time,
Yeah, of course.
the bromance between Drizzt and Belwar. was
Yeah,
that
it's
was great.
bromancy.
I loved it. I thought it was really cool.
When he
I
gets
was
kicked out, it's so sweet. Belwar's like, "I'm with you, man."
okay. Yeah,
He
it
like
was sweet,
sets
but that
out
was like
together.
so silly. Like Belwar is just like, I'm just gonna uproot my entire life, give away all
I'm
of my
too
station.
honored.
Yeah, like you are just like Drizzt is such a fucking cool guy that we're getting an apartment together, Drizzt.
Yeah,
Like,
dude. We're moving in together. We're sharing all the same things.
I mean, Drizzt.
What
Like
did
if
you think
I
of it? Did you think it was like
I
too
thought
hokey?
it was too much too soon, man. Like you
Yeah.
gotta like man, like what a commitment, you know? Like
Yeah.
and it's they don't even have a plan. They're just like, let's go find a place to live together forever.
Right.
And it's like, wait, what?
What?
All right, Drizzt, you and me, we're gonna fight monsters for the
We're
rest of
gonna
our
go out
lives.
there. We're gonna clean up the Underdark. Make it the under not as dark.
Yeah, I mean I thought it was cool that they immediately are fighting monsters.
Yeah, I mean that's
It's not
awesome.
it's not like they just like find a place, but they like set up a little farm and stuff, and it's
Yeah,
just like
dude. They
you
settle down for a little
guys.
bit. It's oh man, when Zachnafine, I know they don't settle down with the whatever the mushroom people are called. I see them as cauliflower people in my head. I don't know why, but
The Myconids.
the Myconids, yeah, it's
Yeah,
sad
they
that
were cool.
Zachnafine just
Yeah, they
takes
seemed
them
like a peaceful,
down.
cool race of fungus
Yeah.
people.
They're just fungus people out there doing their fungus thing,
Yeah.
and mycelia chilling, and they get really taken down by old Zachnafine.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, the mechanics behind Zachnafane kind of coming to his senses in a way. Like, that was really odd because, and I think was it because of some prior battle? Was that what, like, the Illithid thing was for? Or, like,
Maybe where they like pulled him forth a little bit from it or
I
something.
don't know. That was really odd
Yeah,
that,
well, I think they had to give him a little bit of his essence in order for him to be as good of because his sword fightingness wasn't just that he was like such a good sword fighter. It was because he also knew Drizzt and trained him. So I think they pulled like
yeah.
a little bit of his personality back in there so they could like get not only his like muscle memory but also his ability to like be the soldier that could take down Drizzt because he knew his moves, I
Well, not to
guess.
mention, I think it's mentioned that Malice, like her controlling him is weakening her, right? So
Yeah,
like as
like
she
the longer it
weakens,
goes.
totally. So like as she's weakening, he's getting a little bit stronger in his personality.
So if he wouldn't have died, I don't know if he would have become full Zack
No,
ever
I don't think he
again.
would
Like,
have. No, I don't think
yeah,
because even him and Drizzt have like a pretty emotional conversation where like he's basically just like Drizzt, I am not alive anymore. Like you
right.
really need to
You
like
gotta let me
square
go.
with that. But I do think Zach, I know that you're not father of the year here, but like maybe just like lay down or something. Don't jump into a lake of acid. Like that would have been pretty traumatizing for old Drizzt. I mean, just like think about maybe how this is going to affect your kid. He's already been through so much. That seemed like
Yeah,
quite a bit of trauma to just like dump onto Drizzt. But whatever, it's fine.
yeah.
I'm not
I
I'm not a father, so I don't know.
think he was worried about just in case he gets retaken over or something. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, that could have maybe happened.
I don't know at what point though. Bryza decided he was going. She was going to take over and slit the throat of old matron Malice.
I really like when the Do'Urdens are kind of meeting in the antechamber, like anteroom or whatever, and Malice is just like, okay, so plan A didn't work. Let's go do it again. And Frieza and Denon are just like, no.
No, 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 no. You went out
Way
there. You
too,
can
yeah,
go if you
yeah.
want to find out what that's like, but he's basically
You have
master out
no
there.
idea. Yeah, you have no
Yeah.
clue how strong he is. It's ridiculous. Like,
That is very satisfying when he gets the jump on him and drops down, like takes out Dinin and then like scimitar knives and then the fight with her whip thing, snake whip is just so great.
well, I think what would have been really interesting, and I'm not saying Salvatore had to have done this or anything, but I think it would have been really interesting if Frieza or Denon had found out that Drizzt had made that kind of oath to himself to not kill another Drow, because that might have given them a certain like upper hand in
Oh
this
yeah.
situation, because they really could have just thrown Drow at him until but they didn't know that. They didn't know for sure that he wouldn't kill them. But I just thought that would be kind of like an interesting like development. But I mean, I'm kind of
I
glad it didn't
hate
happen.
his I hate his vow to himself. Like, I'm guaranteed, or I'm vowing to never kill the one race that's like going to be hunting me for the rest of my life and is definitely going to try to kill me and is like generally terrible. Like, what?
Yeah, it seems odd that he wouldn't stay practical with that
Yeah,
because I mean, because his survival is so dependent on him
killing Drow health.
just staying violent. I mean, he seems to have really made
Yeah,
his peace with a lot of that up to a certain point that really like that. I don't know. That kind of brings like an interesting like moral conversation into it, though. I guess. I mean, it's like if somebody's willing to kill you, should you be willing to kill them? Like in every case, or should you be able to swear that off? It's it's kind of like Batman. Like Batman won't kill people,
right.
um, even though I'm sure he has.
Yeah,
Uh, it's some way or another.
definitely.
But like like you're gonna have to break your one rule or whatever.
Of course.
Like you're gonna have to kill somebody, and it's and it was kind of like in the Avengers too when Captain America's like, we don't trade lives. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that actually ended up
Uh,
costing like quite a few more lives than he
yeah,
saved, but
sometimes you need
whatever. Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Like, well, whatever. I mean, it's interesting how somebody avoiding conflict can create so much of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Ooh, well said.
yeah, and yeah, Drizzt is definitely he never stopped being interesting for sure.
Yeah.
It's odd after reading so many different kinds of fantasy books. Um, it's odd kind of getting back into something that's like as episodic and like serialized as this.
Mm-hmm.
Where that there are 36 more books about this character,
Right.
so like there's no real danger. So
Really.
it's
Just will not die.
no.
No.
I wonder if Salvatore's ever gonna kill him.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting if like he's like 80 and he's just like, I'm gonna kill Drizzt, I think. Time to kill him.
I mean, he killed Chewbacca.
Have him die of like poison or something super lame.
Did you hear about that? I think like Salvatore wrote a Star Wars book. Um,
Yeah, he was into Star Wars for a minute. I think he helped with a couple of the scripts too.
and I guess he killed off Chewbacca.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it
His book instantly got decanonized.
I can't remember what book it was. He wrote. So he wrote the novelization of Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I think it was Vector Prime
Hmm.
where he kills off Chewbacca.
He'll kill other
Uh,
people's main characters, but his own, no, those ones are remaining alive.
I just looked it up, and apparently Salvatore killed off Chewbacca on a planet succumbing to a killer poison bug swarm.
Wow.
Damn, dude.
Dang.
Yeah, I guess people were pretty upset with him for that. Give him a
Jesus.
Star Wars book, and he's like, "Let's kill arguably one of the most popular characters
Yeah.
in like a
Like I
bug
said, he'll
swarm."
kill other people's main characters, but his own, they're safe.
I have a feeling at some point he's going to want to wrap up Drizzt. Or
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe not though. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting if like if Salvatore like retired or passed away or whatever, and like Drizzt just never died.
Just fades
That'd
into
be
like legend of
yeah, that would
occasionally a
actually
drow elf will save you while you're out in the wilderness.
okay. I have one more question before we kind of wrap this up. This is a pretty short episode because it's a pretty short book, obviously. But what's up with that wizard, Fingal Stick or whatever?
Yeah, the one
Uh,
that turned Clacker.
like, is he just
Clacker?
the wizard's just down there, just hanging? Just
Yeah, so I think the wizards are really an eccentric bunch in Faerun, and they're always doing little extra um
excursions.
excursions and researches, and like tests and stuff to figure out if they can. I think this one was trying to like breed, like crossbreeds, or he was testing out spells and needed to be away from the seeing eyes of other wizards who would judge him for being a terrible wizard or something. I think he was just down there doing experiments,
All right, yeah.
being a
Like,
conniving little conniver.
just toss a wizard on in there.
Yeah, man, it's so sad. Like, whole Clacker, they like finally convinced this guy to change him back, and then Clacker goes rage mode on him, and the thing that like he wants free of is the thing that prevents him from getting free of it because he goes into like Clacker hook horror mode and rips this guy to pieces.
And then Zachnafane just kills him anyway. So that was like,
Yeah,
I thought that book 3 was going to be Drizzt. Like I thought Drizzt was going to kill Zachnafane, or at least like get the one up on him or whatever, prevail against Zach Nefane, essentially. And then Drizzt and Belvar and Clacker were going to go back to Menzoberranzan, and then the whole of book 3 would be Drizzt trying to like avoid the Do'urdens and team up with another house or something, and then figure out how to save his friend Clacker while also dismantling the Do'urdens. Like, that's what I thought Sojourn was going to be. Which, if you think about it, kind of seemed like what this book was setting up.
For sure.
and then no, they just
like, you kind of thought that the end Sojourn would end like this one ended.
Yeah, pretty
him
much.
Setting out. Yeah. No, this one's kind of the transition from him to Icewind Dale.
All right, that's pretty cool then.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. It takes a totally different turn.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up, everybody. Thank you for listening to our recap and discussion of Exile. Not my favorite R.A. Salvatore book I've ever read, but definitely some high points. Lake of Acid is always cool. Basilisks are always cool. I don't know why we had Pex and Svirfnebly. That's whatever. I wish that Clacker was still alive, so I could have at least got some kind of emotional attachment to something. I wonder if we're going to see Belwar again, but I don't know. I think Brunor Battlehammer is probably the main stand-in for him.
The new one. Yeah, I will say one thing about Salvatore books is any friend of Drizzt is never fully gone, That's
pretty awesome.
They always come back, maybe 10, 12 books later, but they'll come back around.
That would be really wild to read book 24 or something in this 38 book series and then see Belwar again. The most
it might
honored
happen.
Burrow Warden. But yeah, everybody, really appreciate your time listening to this with us, and I hope that you join us for episode 3 in our Dark Elf trilogy, wanderings and skitterings.
It's been a blast. I love it. I'm so happy that you're reading these. I love
these
books.
are really cool. But yeah, everybody, hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.